What's up, YouTubers? So I was out sick for a couple days. I don't know what happened, but I'm feeling better now at least. So I'm trying to play catch up. I have a ton of comments and a bunch of emails I got to respond to, all that stuff. So I'm going to be getting to that tonight now that I'm feeling a little bit better. But in the meantime, since my last video, I actually picked up one of these things, and I've talked a lot about how they're pretty decent welders, and they even run 60-10 rods, which is awesome because I don't know how much cheaper of a welder you can buy than this that will run 60-10s. And I paid like, I think $260 for this with a coupon through Harbor Freight, so definitely well worth that money. And I even got the upgraded stinger for it. But I thought I would just open this up and talk a little bit about what I got coming up here. So this thing I'm only going to be using for a little bit. I'm not really going to be shooting too many videos. If you see me doing a stick welding video, I'm actually going to be using this welder instead of my Miller one. But beyond that, I'm just going to use it for a short time. And then at the end of May, I'm going to end up giving this thing away since it's my birthday and all, and I want to help somebody out. Standard manual. Now, if you recall from one of my other videos, I did actually own one of these, and due to some unfortunate circumstances, a gentleman decided to break into my property and steal it for himself. And then due to the joys of the legal system, never served time for it, but got locked up for some other stuff. Then about a year after that, tried to come back and steal some more stuff from me, because, you know, that's what you do when you're 1 week out of prison. And that time, he actually got caught. I got better video evidence that was irrefutable that it was him, and, well, he almost got shot in the process. That didn't help either, but long story short, he's now in jail, and who knows, they're probably going to give him a week's sentence for it, but that's what's in the past is in the past. Bought another one. I'll have fun with it while I have it, and then, like I said, I'm going to give it away. So what we're actually going to do today is not just an unboxing. I'm going to show you how to upgrade this stinger on this. So let's get into that. So the stinger that this guy comes with is kind of, you know, low buck. It's actually the same one that came with the $100 Amazon special welder. And I find that these things tend to get pretty hot in here when you're welding at, I don't know, 120 to 150 amps. And it just isn't really that great of a stinger. The jaws suck. You get the idea. So I ended up buying the Harbor Freight one. This guy right here, which I actually think is a really good stinger. I've used the same one on my previous titanium 225, and I really liked it. So when you see here how nice and high that handle is, like I can hold it right here even with gloves on any way I want, and my fingers aren't there. It's in a good position. It's got nice solid spring in there. Even for grabbing it, if you're one of those guys that welds like this, it's a lot easier to use this than this thing. I mean, this has an even stronger spring, and it's like if you're doing it like this, like good luck. Like I can barely do that, but yeah, far superior jaw. This also has the crossover up top, which is nice, so you can come straight out there. If I recall correctly, the rod is a little steep on this guy. Actually, that's not bad. I've had some of these where they come out where they're like this. Like, how useless is that? Like, how would you even weld with that? So anyways, we're going to swap this out. Really pretty simple task. You just loosen up this screw back here. This slides off. Now, I don't have an Allen key that size, so I will go and find one. All right. All you got to do is loosen both of these, if I can even get this key in this damn thing. There we go. And this should just slide right out. Oh, they really got that tight in there. Back that out a little bit more. Sometimes they put a crimp on these. Yeah, this one does as well. And you know what? I'm just going to leave that on there. Now, if you look at this, and bring it way up to the camera, might be a little hard to see, but this is all solid copper, which is good. It's not copper-clad aluminum wire. That cheap $100 Amazon special welder had copper-clad aluminum. You definitely don't want that for any kind of power handling. And this guy, oh, of course, uses a flathead on there. Let's see if my multi-tool probably has one. Maybe. Yeah, so anyways, now that I'm feeling a little bit better, getting back to the emails, again, sorry for the delay on the responses to the emails. They've just been borderline not been able to do anything. Yeah, you can see the size difference here. It can fit a really wide power cable. Now this guy we're just going to shove in there and tighten down. Make sure you don't do what I almost did and didn't put this on there. Yeah, it's weird. So speaking of messages and stuff, it alerted me that I had a bunch of messages in my email on videos, and then I go and click the link to answer them, and then there's no message present. So I'm not really sure what was going on with that. If someone, maybe some of you guys put a message and then deleted it, I don't know on that. But again, like I said, I apologize for taking so long to respond because I was in no shape or form in a position to respond, if you know what I mean. I was not doing good. So again, like I said, I apologize for that. So I'm just going to tighten the hell out of this to where I know this isn't going to be going anywhere. Now, one thing I'll say too about this, so this is number 6 wire. I have a video out talking about wire sizes and duty cycles a little bit. And you'll probably recall that this is, and I'll show you real quick. Now, you'll have to trust me on it. It's number 6 gauge. Number 6 is really not, I would say, an adequate wire size for a 200 plus amp welder. The assumption, I believe, with this welder is that you're simply not going to weld anywhere near 200 amps with it, which is why they're able to put such a small a number 6 wire on this. If you're actually going to use this welder and weld a decent amount at 180, 200 amps, you're going to want to upgrade this wire to number 4, if not number 2. I mean, number 2, ideally for a 225 amp welder would be the best. However, if you put number 2 on this, you could probably exceed the duty cycle of the machine before you would exceed the duty cycle of number 4. So how much number 2 matters? Ideally, yeah, number 2 should be on here for gauge, but you get the idea on that. The other interesting thing, so this uses DINs, I believe it's called 25 because it's 25 millimeter, or no, that doesn't look, that 25 conductors, I don't remember, it's DINs 25 is what it's called. I can't remember how they rate that, but it's a much smaller connector than a DINs 50, or I think it's called a DINs 3550, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the DINs connector on both my Dynasty and on my Firepower / ESOB 210, and you can see the difference there. Much bigger. Ideally, this machine should have the bigger DINs connector. This is only rated for probably intermittent 180 amp use. That's about my only negative I can say about this Harbor Freight machine, or one of the very few, is just it should really have bigger DINs connectors. Now again, this machine is kind of designed more or less to run at 120 to 140 amps output. So within that range, this is definitely acceptable. And at 200 amps, very intermittent use it will work. But again, let's be honest here, this machine is not meant to go into a shop and run 200 amps all day. This is meant for your home hobbyist for occasional 200 plus amp use. And for that, for 1/8" rods that most of us run in 332, it's perfect. But just keep that in mind. You know, the duty cycle on this thing at 200 plus amps is probably only 10–15%, so not really the best. But again, for us home hobbyists, it's perfect. Now the ground clamp here, I'm actually not gonna upgrade, and I know that sounds a little ridiculous because I just upgraded the Stinger, and I'll show you why. So this has a pretty decent spring in it, has a nice copper band. Now no, these aren't copper jaws. How much amperage will this handle? Probably not too well at 200 plus amps, but for what I'm gonna use it for, the few hours that I'll use this before I give it away, I think it's perfect. And not only that, for your average person, it's fine. Now Harbor Freight does have a copper or bronze jawed upgrade that you can put on this, but I'll tell you, I'm not really a huge fan of it, and I'll show you why. So this thing, like, I'm just gonna use this as an example. This bites on it hard enough to where, like, I can tug on this and it doesn't come out of the jaw. So it has, like, I wouldn't wanna put my finger in there, that's for sure. Well, the Harbor Freight that's like this bronze, much fancier looking one that's rated for like 400 amps, it looks good, but the actual spring pressure to the jaw isn't that good. And like, I can put my finger in it, which I don't want to do that there, and it doesn't even hurt to have my finger in it. And what I found with Harbor Freight's upgraded one is that it's very easy if you clip it on something like, say, a trailer ramp that you need to repair. If you tug on the wire or bump it, it just falls off. So it just doesn't have the spring pressure, which, and I'll show you, I'll wheel myself over here. That's why I used this on my Dynasty, which I bought online. This sucker, like, yeah, I don't want to put my finger in there. This does not have that issue. Like, if you clamp it on something, like, that's not going anywhere. So if you want to upgrade the Stinger, do it. Get the one from Harbor Freight. My recommendation, I really like it. But for this, go and find yourself one of these. They have them on Amazon. For a solid bronze unit, this is far, far better than the one at Harbor Freight. Like, the spring pressure is better. I'm not a big fan of that, like I said. Let me clip this back down here. Yeah, Harbor Freight also has an upgrade that's more or less a jaw like this, where it does have copper in here rather than this, which is just like galvanized or zinc steel. So that might be better. But like I said, like even this one, yeah, I don't want to put my finger in that one either. Much better for clipping on stuff. So that's my recommendation. So this thing's very simple for hookup. This switch over here is just if you're running on 120 or 240, you just switch it to the voltage you're running. This over here probably is just a light to tell you that it's turned on. This is the thermal overload, so if that's on, it stops welding because it's too hot. And then you have a very simple dial. And I know that that isn't a lot to work with, but trust me, with the way that this thing welds, you don't have to worry about that. So very simple, on 120 volts, the inner ring that's dotted is what your actual output is. Now, on 120 volt, the max output's only 70 amps. And part of that reason is that this is in compliance with, I guess, a few electrical codes and stuff and standards. So what ends up happening is you can't just arbitrarily make this thing output 120 amps because it would A, trip the breaker, and B, wouldn't be electrically compliant with a lot of codes out there. So they chose to max out at 70. Now the downside is that you could probably buy a cheaper welder like that Amazon special I have and actually get more power out of it on 120. It will likely trip your breaker in a short time, but you could technically get more power. So it goes without saying, I guess the gist of what I'm telling you is to get the most out of this, you really want to have your 240, 220 volt circuit for this, and you won't have any problems. If you do only have 120 volt, you can use this with the adapter. It's just you're going to be limited to like 5/64 rods and 3/32, and you're only going to be able to weld about 3/16 in thinner steel. Like you really aren't going to have the heat to be melting 1/4 inch. So it's just so you're aware of it. Now on 240 volt, you watch or look at the outside ring, which brings it up to 225 amp. For most of us, we'll never be using over 155 amps. I mean, most rods are 120 to 135 for thicker steel. So that's good. And it does say 6010, which all that's telling you is this outside green ring to this point is the range that you would want to run 6010s, and that would be 3/32/8 and 5/32 rods. Now this will run 6010, I already know it will, so that's awesome because it's a great rod to use, and it runs 6011 perfect. Now when I ran this welder before, it seemed to have a little bit of a hot start capability where when you struck your rod, it just seemed to boost the amperage a little bit. Now it may not have hot start, I'm not sure, because I've never tested that, but it just welds like it has it. Very easy to strike an arc because the open circuit voltage on this is very high. So from what I remember, these things really weld really good, like very easy welder to learn off of. So let's power it up and see if it actually works. Alrighty. Yeah, as I suspected, so it does have a little light. I didn't notice that. So we're running on 240 volt, and then this is just saying the output must be on, I think is what this says. The fan on this, as you can tell, is actually very quiet, which is something I don't remember, which I do not like a loud fan. Yeah, and other than that, I mean, it's all old school. You adjust it via where you want it, and you just go by what your welds look like for more or less. So very simple, no arc force settings, no hot start settings. It's just simple, but that's all right because like I said, this welds pretty good. So I'll run a pass, I'll run a single rod just to make sure it welds, and then I'm gonna go put it over on the workbench there, and I'm gonna work on another video. All right, I'm gonna test it with a 6010 5P red rod, and we'll see if it runs. All right, so it ran pretty much a whole 6010 red rod, no problems. Looks really good. This, I kind of got my hand cut up with this cord here, but yeah, runs really good. And I gotta say this, about this chipping hammer, you may have saw a post from me about it. This little pick point on there works really good at getting all of that slag, that 6010s, like you can see I didn't get in there too well. But 6010 has a real bad problem with the slag on the toes. You want to clean it off with a good chipping hammer or something, because if you just weld over that, you can get what's called wagon tracks, where not that we're x-raying our stuff, but that may not melt through if you run 7018 over this. You may not clear that out, so that'll wind up staying in your weld. But anyways, as you can see, runs 60-10 just fine, and obviously if it runs 60-10, you know it's going to run 70-18. So there you have it. Like I said, I really like these little stick titanium 225s. Just upgrade the stinger to something a little bit better, and if you're going to weld a lot above 150 amps, it definitely wouldn't hurt to upgrade your cables to number 2 or number 4. But beyond that, really nice lightweight welder and quiet. Really not too much bad to say about it. Till next time, guys, thanks for sticking around.